This is the How to Succeed podcast, brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training. This week, we're talking about how to succeed at deal coaching with Troy Kanter, CEO of Octus IQ. He's right there. If you're watching the YouTube version, join us over there. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you catch the rest of these or share this episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app right now. Find more information about Sandler at sandler.com. And if you're looking for help on deal coaching, talk to your local Sandler coach. We're going to talk with Troy Kanter next about how to succeed at deal coaching. All right, Troy, let's just set it up here. People are messing up their forecast, their deal coaching, their pipeline management. It's a mess. What do you think the common mistakes are here, and how do we succeed at deal coaching?
Mike, it's always great to talk with you. You know, we study tens of thousands of sales leaders a year and hundreds, if not thousands, of operational practices at organizations around the world. Deal coaching and the ability of leaders to give meaningful, timely feedback is the single most underdeveloped management skill that exists. And it's been persistent. It's not like it's a new phenomenon. It's as long as we've been tracking this over a decade now, the single most underdeveloped skill in sales leaders and in leadership in general, the ability to give meaningful feedback. But when you're running a sales force, being able to give timely, meaningful deal coaching can solve so many of your downstream problems.
Yeah, I think there is a ton of reasons for that, right? Mostly people are doing it after the fact, right? They ask the salesperson, how did that call go? And they go, we got one, boss, or not so well. And we're kind of trying to do that post work rather than pre-call debriefing and pre-planning and stuff. I think also, and this is where we bring you in, you're CEO of Octus IQ. We should probably talk a little bit about the intelligence and AI that we can bring into this now, but they're not dealing with real facts. If the manager is coaching, they're probably coaching based on what the salesperson told them is going on with the deal and trying to coach that way rather than having any sort of independently verified data. Is that fair?
No. Well said. It's unstructured. There's no process around it. It's one manager will do it entirely different than another manager on the same team. And those same managers will do each session they run that day entirely different than they did the last one. And it's with no data. But, we've spent years studying this, and there's a business process and a methodology to it. And when you adapt a data-driven methodology, it's actually not only is it more effective and more meaningful, it's faster. You can get more done when you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's funny because we're preaching to the choir here, but this is why it makes a good partnership, Octus IQ and Sandler. And we're excited about this one. Is I think there's two problems to having a great coaching conversation with your team. One is the data and information you have about the deal and what's actually going on with it. The other one is the coaching skills and the questioning skills and methodology of the manager to have those conversations with their team. And so if you don't have a good structured sales process like Sandler and a methodology and common language you can talk to, it's really hard to have these conversations be consistent across an organization. And if you don't have good insight into what's going on with the account, where they are, who the decision makers are, and we can talk about all the different imperatives here in a minute. But if you don't have that data and insight, it's really hard to have the conversation too. So can you tell me a little bit about the ideal attitudes? Let's say we're a manager or we're a sales leader thinking about trying to add these things to our conversation. What's the right attitude to approach deal coaching in the first place?
Well, if I step back, the impact that this has on your sellers is so significant. And you think about selling's harder now than when we started our podcast, Mike. It's, the complexities that we have to deal with as sellers is through the roof. All right. So it's just natural as sellers that just for self-preservation and survival, you have a glass is half full kind of approach to life, right? So you have there's this natural built-in subjectivity, happy years versus real, true deal objectivity, right? So as a manager, how do you continue to nourish and develop and keep the rep enthusiastic about the pursuit? And at the same time, bring objectivity, but bring objectivity in a way that's not about the traditional inspection and what's going wrong with the deal and the ineptness of the rep, but
Yeah.
really focusing on what are those things in the eyes of the customer that really tend to make a difference. And then what's a structured way at which you can work through that with your rep? Because when you're doing this really well, it solves so many things for the rep. It's actually one of the greatest forms of development that happens for the rep. And you think about all the Sandler principles and training that they've gone through. When you're actually doing it, it's like watching the game film, deal by deal. How are you bringing it to life on a real-time pursuit? And once you bring it to life on a real-time pursuit, all of a sudden it can dramatically not only affect the rep's development, it affects your win rates. It affects your ability to make a decent forecast. It actually, the data shows great deal coaching is one of the single greatest protectors of organizational margin. That the poorer the deal coaching is, not only do your win rates drop, but the ones you do win, you're way off on target margin. You're giving away the farm. And so there's just
Right.
so many downstream business things that get solved when we can bring up the skill sets of our
I'll
sales.
add one thing from the Sandler perspective, which is we have a new Sandler rule number 1, which is sales is a conversation between adults to uncover the truth. And I think that's a really great definition for a sales call, but it's also a really great definition for a deal coaching meeting with your employee, right? Your sales team is we're going to have an adult conversation, unemotional, a logical conversation between people who are both savvy business people. We're not talking down to them. We're not criticizing their deal. We're not, building them up at our top salesperson and putting them on a pedestal and everything they say is the truth either. A conversation between equal business stature adults to uncover the truth. Is this a good deal for us? Do we have a likely chance of winning? If we don't, what can we do about it? If we do, great. How do we accent those things and make sure this deal keeps moving? I think that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, I like the rule.
Now, tell me about the behavior part of things. There's so much we can unpack here. I already teased the imperatives and things that make a difference in our deal coaching, but I think maybe we should start with how often, what are we doing in a modern sales management role with the tools like Deal IQ that we have or with Sandler coaching? How often are we doing this? Is it every single deal? Is it the most important deals? Is it like practice? Are we once a month, setting a one-on-one with our rep, or is this like daily? What's a good behavior cadence look like for the goals, plans, and actions here?
Yeah, I think in B2B sales organizations, I think a really good rhythm and cadence is, Monday morning, you've got your 1 hour all hands on deck sales meeting, right? Mm-hmm. Then on Mondays, typically the ratio for a frontline sales manager is about 6-1. Each one of those 6 reps gets 30 minutes of one-on-one time with the sales manager. And there, it's amazing if you follow this methodology of where you're not diving into the funnel. And that's, as sales leaders, that's your first thing. It's like you start pounding on the funnel, you start looking at the forecast, but you just do 30 minutes on, what'd you learn this past week? Were you stuck this past week? What can we do to be helpful? Review what their personal goals and objectives are. Set a plan for activity for the week, and then get that one-to-one touch base. Then at the very end, you can do a high-level review of where the forecast is sitting. Well, then all of a sudden, before noon on Monday, you've had your all-hands-on-deck meeting. You've had all your one-on-ones. Now, everything that you need to know that typically as a sales manager, you spend your week chasing, it's all solved by noon. And then the balance of your week, Monday afternoon, all the way through Friday, is nothing about, it's just single threaded on deal coaching, because that's where your work gets done. The more time you can spend in meaningful cycles, rep by rep, on your critical deals for the quarter and your next most critical deals for the out quarter, it's amazing how much more productive you'll be and how much time you get back if you just sort of use that as your weekly methodology and cadence.
I like that a lot. And you already added the caveat, but I'll just highlight it again. Obviously, it depends on your sales cycle, the size of the deals, how important they are, the number of reps you have, and all that kind of stuff. But I think what we're seeing is in today's world, sellers are not spending enough time selling. They're doing a lot of admin tasks and other things that need to be probably automated, and tools to improve their face-to-face or voice-to-voice time with clients. I think the same thing is probably true for managers. There's probably way too much time spent on other things than deal coaching, helping your reps be productive, move sales forward, and get stuff through the funnel. So anything you can do to improve that time or maximize that time is probably a good effort.
So what we're seeing, Mike, it's about 80-20 for frontline sales managers. 80% of their time is spent on non-deal coaching activities. And it's like, to get a gigantic leap forward in productivity, you flip it. It's got to be 80% of your time is really spent on strategic deal coaching, deal advancement. And again, and it's amazing, companies that have adopted this, it's one of those things that's easy to say but hard to do. But once you put the discipline and you put a process and a system in place, every downstream KPI is solved almost immediately. It's one of the single greatest impacts you can have on everything that's getting in the way of a really productive quarter.
Yeah, and we're seeing, just as more AI tools and technology and stuff comes out, that you can automate so much of the reporting and other issues, or like follow-up and sequences and reminders and all kinds of things that you should be spending more time as a human having human connection, empathy conversations that the AI can't have these days, right? That's the coaching and important conversations that you need to be having with your team. But let's go into the deal coaching conversation now. So we're in that meeting, we're having a deal coaching conversation. What does that structure look like?
So, I have 7 questions that we've got an amazing amount of data, that the more in depth your reps can go on these 7 questions, and you can actually even create a checklist. You can put it, we have a product called Deal IQ that can sit inside your CRM, or you can use it in a workbook. But it really facilitates it. Each one of these 7 questions have 5 sub-questions. And the predictability of this on win rates is just through the roof. But again, it's pretty straightforward. And as sales leaders, this is going to sound fairly intuitive, but no one manages to it. And if I just take a quick walk down them, it's as simple as, okay, first imperative, who's the buyer? In a lot of complex selling, you don't even get to the buyer. But the rep has to know who's committing the organizational capital. And if you can't get to them, what's the strategy to make sure that our influencers are actually having an impact and sort of carrying the water for us to influence that buyer? Second one, again, is a whole series of questions and thoughtfulness with the rep on who are all the influencers in this deal? Can you map them out? How is each one of them participating in the deal? How do they feel about our solution? Are they advocates? Are they blockers? Are there red flags there? There's just, again, all of a sudden, just the thoughtfulness of making the rep think through that and think through it in a safe, conversational way is incredibly powerful. Third one, who we're competing against. Why would we win? Why would we lose? There's a whole rhythm and cadence around managing procurement as you get to the later stages. It's basically a decisioning methodology. And then the ultimate, which, again, I've run a lot of companies, and whenever I get the call from the rep that's on the road that says, Troy, just amazing call. Say, okay, tell me about it. And, how this conversation goes in most organizations is they loved the demo. They loved our solution. Great relationship connect. They love the Royals. I love the Royals. I got this. He wore brown shoes. I wore brown shoes. Everything's good. I got this, boss. That's good, because it's like we just spent $20 million on R&D. I hope they like the demo. Yeah. But by the way, what if I called that person up that you just met with and said, was our sales process so good you would have paid for it? What did you learn today? Can you do your job better because of your interaction with our team? And when you force your rep to start thinking about that, that's imperative number 7. What value have we delivered in the sales process? So all of a sudden, your reps get used to this cadence. Buyer, influencers, blockers, why we'll win, why we'll lose, who are all the, how do we tie this together into a win theme? How do we create value during the sales process? All of a sudden, there's this instant muscle memory that starts to occur in the reps. So all of a sudden, they start to self-teach on every one of their own deals, that they get to where they aren't counting on their manager to hold them accountable. They're actually holding themselves accountable because they know they've got to be able to answer to it and speak to it.
Obviously, I like all of those. I think why we'll win, why we'll lose is always interesting. I love how we're adding value and bringing stuff. There's been so much research, and I think Sandler is known for decades now that we need to be challenging them with questions, bringing up things they haven't thought of before, creating some sort of unique value throughout this process. If people can just Google it and find the price online and buy it, they probably ordered it on Amazon already. Like, the whole reason there's a human seller involved here is because we're adding value, we're simplifying things, or we're building consensus, or doing some sort of discovery that they wouldn't have been able to do by themselves, right? That's bringing value. Those are all really cool ideas.
Yeah, all for another show, but I think the data is just so clear that if you're selling something that can be transactionally purchased digitally, those jobs are going away at an unbelievable rate. And, and there's a lot of other data sources that show a lot of B2B buyers don't really want to interact with salespeople. But those that do create value during the selling process, that make their prospects better, that the prospects say, look, that sales process is part of that company's value prop. I can do my job better because of that sales interaction. Those people are worth gold. Gold not only to their customers, but to their organization and the people that are a part of it. And that's the future of selling. Are you creating value through selling?
Can you help me out a little bit more as the manager who's having this conversation? Does it require a lot of setup and what we call upfront contracts to make sure that they feel safe and that they can have this conversation? What do you do as a result of it to make sure they take the right actions? How do we wrap it up? I feel like those 7 questions are so great at uncovering the data, but then I'm thinking, if I'm a manager, I'm going to go, okay, well, what if they're all bad? They go, no, we don't know who the influences are. Like, I have no idea what value I brought. I really just did our pitch. Where do we go from there?
Yeah. And that's our job, right? That's when we get a chance to teach and coach and break it down. Because that's if our players aren't ready to play, that's on us as coaches, right? And I love that sports metaphor. It's like, we've got to put the very best athletes on the field we can, but then we've got to get them ready to execute the plays at excellence. And so there's such a difference between sales managers who sort of say, well, reps aren't good enough. I'm not sure I've got the right guys, versus it's my responsibility as a sales manager to run it to the end of the earth to get each one of these individuals ready to do their job at excellence. And then if 2 quarters in, 3 quarters in, they just can't make the leap, well, you can at least, you're doing that human being a favor by helping them find another place to work or another career. And so all of a sudden, performance coaching not only is so important for your personal paycheck and your organization's bottom line, it's a responsibility of being a great human being and being a great leader. We study thousands of sellers and thousands of leaders every year. When I ask this question in all interviews that we do, tell me about the greatest sales manager you've ever worked for. Name them. And then, everyone instantly, great sellers, no one pauses on that. They instantly they name the name of the best sales manager they've ever worked for. And I'll say, well, why? And 90+% of the answers are, they made me better. They gave me the best feedback I've ever had in my life, and they held me accountable. And there's something about that. Again, think about the simplicity of that. If you want everyone that works for you to perceive you as a more exceptional leader, give timely, meaningful feedback, give them guidance, advice, and counsel, and have expectations that they follow through on it. It's just such a simple formula.
Yeah, that's really good. The one thing I would add too that I've seen is confidence. That if your manager knows these things and they have questions in a direction, you're going to feel more confident that they know where they're going and in this deal. And so often, salespeople throughout these complicated decision-making things lose confidence because they don't have the data, or they don't know where they are, or they don't know the next step to take. And we all get in these cycles where, go back to our sports metaphor of like baseball, hitters lose more than they win, right? And if you get on a hot streak, you feel great. If you're in a slump, you don't feel great. And great managers can coach to that. And I think some of the data that Deal IQ gives me allows me to realize that these are percentages and that I have a good chance of winning, even if this last call didn't work, or if I don't have a great chance of winning. It's not on me that I'm a terrible salesperson. It's that throughout the sales process, we haven't done the right steps. And to me, that objective feedback really helps me stay sane throughout all of these deals, throughout all of this coaching and feedback. Right?
No, perfectly well said. Because again, data on everything about selling. And so as we have this system overlaid in CRMs, you're looking at our clients' data. It's, 2 weeks left to play in the quarter. Here are 50 deals in stage 6, one step away from closing. And all of a sudden your CRM is putting a 75% confidence weighting on those and then discounting the total value and giving you what your number is. But all of a sudden, when you have this kind of rich data on each one of these imperatives, where your position is really exceptionally strong and where you're weak, all of a sudden, deal by deal, there's entirely different arithmetic on that. And when you put arithmetic against these imperatives versus stage of funnel, because there's a lot of times you're one of two, but yet your deal confidence score on these 7 imperatives may only be a 40%. Well, you're not going to get that one to the income statement. But you've got another one where you're one of two, when you're at 80% deal confidence on these imperatives, take that one to the bank. And so it just brings a more, what I would call more micro level data to selling. And that's what selling is. It's micro moments of interaction in creating value and understanding your customer and tailoring the solution. And as leaders, we ought to have access to that. And when you have access to it, you can teach to it, you can coach to it, and you can make a plan around it.
Anything else you want to share about this partnership or the Deal IQ tool that we should have asked and we haven't gotten there yet?
Well, no, a quick one is that, I've worked with and studied all the sales training methodologies around the world. And Sandler is the absolute gold standard for how you build world-class sellers and how you really operationalize a really highly effective go-to-market unit. And so what we've done inside Deal IQ that I think, beyond these 7 imperatives is we've taken that Sandler methodology and overlaid it inside Deal IQ as well. So as you're navigating a deal, not only are you moving it through your operational stage gates inside Salesforce or Hubs, looking at your 7 imperatives, but you're also, the rep is holding themselves accountable to where they are in the Sandler methodology. And we figured out how to score and weight that against the likelihood of a deal getting done. So all of a sudden, you overlay Sandler's methodology with our 7 imperatives inside your CRM. It not only transforms your ability to make a forecast, but it accelerates the adoption of all of this really rich learning and teaching and development that Sandler's giving to organizations. Because training and development, without the ongoing measurement and reinforcement, undermanages it. So it's just, I just think it's just such an eloquent compliment to put reinforcement, measurement, and data on top of world-class teaching. And when you do that, you just get such an accelerated value.
That's what I like about it too. I've noticed two things that really accelerate the process for Sandler. The methodology works there. You know, we have the big 7 steps of the Sandler selling system and stuff. And every once in a while, we run into a tool or a partnership or even a client or somebody that's really good at zooming in on one of these things. I think of it like a magnifying glass of just like the decision making process. We cover how to do this and what you want and why it's so important and how to have those conversations. But when you zoom in on these, you mentioned the 7 imperatives, but there's 5 underneath. So that means there's 35 different questions we need the answers to. It's like a magnifying glass just zooming you in on this decision making process that we've never seen before. But on top of that, what you mentioned is the measurement part. Is we know Sandler's worked for 50 years in every industry with, you know, around the world, different countries and cultures. But it's nice to know with measurement and AI and objective data that it works. And then it gives you that different level of confidence and it lets you know where you are. So you might have a rep say, oh, I'm really great at the decision step, but are they? How would you actually know that besides taking their word for it or their revenue performance, right? And this gives that extra layer to it that just adds the credibility and confidence on the back end too.
Yeah, it becomes now you can make data-driven decisions on the ongoing development, rep by rep by rep. Because we all know we've all run big sales forces. Each rep needs something a little bit different. And now this is the data that you can see how it's coming through on wins, how it's coming through on cross-sell, upsell, how it's coming through on target margin. So you name your favorite metric KPI, all of a sudden now you know what skill, what lever do I have to pull to drive that inside my organization.
Love it. And again, if you didn't catch that earlier, Octus IQ is a new partner of Sandler. So you can ask your Sandler coach or trainer about Deal IQ and they can help you get started. You can reach out to Troy Kanter on LinkedIn as well if you just want to connect directly with Troy there. And ask your sales trainer or reach out to our enterprise team if you got more than one location. Just go to Sandler.com, ask about deal coaching, sales forecasting tools, how you can improve your pipeline management, pipeline velocity. Those are all things we do on a regular basis here at Sandler. But I wanted to get to know you a little bit better here, Troy. So before we let you go, 3 quick ones for you. How do you define success at this point in your career?
No, I really appreciate it because I've been very fortunate. Was the founder of a company that was one of the platforms for one of the very first software as a service big data companies before big data was even a term. Took a company public in 2005, coming off a $40 million year, and within 7 years it broke 400 million. So that's a pretty good run rate, right? Pretty good growth rate. IBM bought that. From there I went and worked in the private equity space where I was running, I don't know, 15 to 20 large global sales training and leadership training companies around the world. And from there, that's where I really figured out what's next and how I want to measure success, is that I was working across all these different methodologies and companies making millions of dollars in investment. And I was just thinking, wow, the methodologies that I used to grow my first company were centered and grounded around data. And so I basically put together some of the best data scientists, best psychologists that I had ever worked with in my career and put together a data-driven system for selling and work with Sandler on how do we help that come to life. And so that to me is my ultimate measure of success, is how do you bring science and data to what is probably, I think, one of the most important crafts in commerce. Nothing in the world happens until you figure out how to convince someone to invest their capital in a solution that you represent. And when you do it really, really well, everything in the world works better. Your clients get better. All the people that work for you at your organization get to participate in growth and reinvestment and what it means to people personally. When you're just blowing through quota, so many wonderful things in life happens. And so there's something about helping individuals grow and helping companies grow that just has this like spidering effect that I get a lot of emotional pleasure from that.
Awesome. And you came dangerously close to one of my dad's favorite quotes, which is nothing happens until somebody sells something. Do you have a favorite quote, motto, or mantra?
It's similar to your dad's. It's as you're growing companies, growing your sales force, growing organizations, there's this rule that I've just lived by, and it is revenue solves every business problem that exists. No matter what the problem is, you can sell your way through it, because it just creates the cash flow and the energy and the momentum that it takes to reinvest in every part of your company that you need to keep getting better at. So it's whenever in doubt, go sell something.
I think it was Mark Cuban that said, if you want to be rich and famous, try rich first, because, being famous without being rich is a pain in the butt. And I feel like that is what you're saying with business there. Like, you'd rather be rich with capital and revenue and have delivery problems than, be ready to deliver and have no sales. So start with the sales problem first, and then the rest of it will fix itself.
Yeah, right on.
Last one. Was there a biggest failure or lesson learned you had to get over in your career in order to be successful, or a particular hurdle that you feel like was the one that you had to break through?
There's this reoccurring theme when you do what we do for a living. This is really hard work. Growing companies, growing people, being responsible and accountable for a revenue number is a really complex job. And so, I've mismanaged a lot of capital on that journey, right? But a few of them I've gotten really right. But the general theme that I think has sort of gotten me through those tough moments, and I love this one too, it's you fight through the standing 8 count. That you just are constantly faced with hurdles and obstacles, and sometimes they feel insurmountable when you're building something. And it's like, just never take your foot off the gas. So I love that kind of boxing metaphor. And it seems like you're about to lose, the ref steps in and gives you that 8 seconds to catch your breath. Don't catch your breath. Keep throwing punches.
Love that. Again, thanks for joining us on the podcast here. Troy Kanter, CEO of Octus IQ. Ask your Sandler trainer about Deal IQ and fix it. Your deal coaching, your sales forecasting, your pipeline management, and velocity, all big things that we can help you with. I think
great. Really appreciate it, Mike.
All right. For more information on Sandler, go to Sandler.com. Again, click find a training location to find one near you. Or if you have more than one location, click the Get Started button and you can talk to our enterprise team as well. Until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. We'll see ya. Good selling.